Eagles have made a trade with the Jacksonville Jaguars. And that's when the excitement kind of goes a little bit more on the downside. It wasn't for a defensive end, Trayvon Walker, which a lot of Eagle fans, have been clamoring for, but for running back Tank Bigsby. And the price of that trade was a 2026 fifth round and a sixth round pick. And you can take a look at some of the details on this trade via the ESPN article that will be pulled up right now. Forgive me. So they acquired running back Tank Bigsby from the Jacksonville Jaguars, like I said, for a 2026 and for a 2026 fifth round and sixth round pick. And really, it was a move that Philadelphia claims to be mainly for special teams, mainly for returning kicks. However, I find the timing on this trade to be a little odd. Odd in the sense, let me pull this down so you get a full glimpse of the moneymaker. Timing in the sense that was weird because Will Shipley in week 1 sustained a rib injury in the Dallas Cowboy game. And just so happens to be that after he sustained his rib injury, we go out and trade for a running back after also losing Van Sumeren on the opening kickoff right before Jalen Carter spit on Dak Prescott's chest. Now, again, we had this conversation already about him being baited or not. I don't give a damn about that. We're going to see what Philadelphia and what the NFL league offices do in regards to punishing Jalen Carter, which will most likely be a hefty fine. He already got, quote-unquote, suspended for a game because he didn't play a snap in the week 1 game against Dallas, right? So in that sense, you could say that suspension's done with. Now it's just a matter of a monetary fine. Point being is we trade for running back Tank Bigsby, and we also signed Zadarius Smith a few days earlier to buffer the edge room. And it's something that Philadelphia has been trying to address since the beginning of the offseason, since losing Josh Sweat and Milton Williams on the defensive side of the ball. And it was odd to see in that Dallas Cowboy game, not seeing Azeez Ojulari be active. He ended up not playing week 1, and it kind of gave you a little bit of a hint saying, like, hey, we need to do something about the edge room. And then also we heard rumors about them being in the Micah Parsons sweepstake, offering many picks to bring the guy in. Dallas obviously said no because that's one of the smart things that they did was say no to the Philadelphia Eagles and trade him in division, right? Nonetheless, you bring in Zadarius Smith to address the edge room. You bring Tank Bigsby in via trade to address running back depth and kick returner. And then there's a bunch of other moves that they have made that we've talked about in the past. I mean, look at all the moves that they've made. Trading for Jacorian Bennett, who we know. They traded for John Mechie, Sam Howell, Fred Johnson, the tackle from the Jaguars. They traded for Tank Bigsby, obviously, and they just signed Zadarius Smith. All of these moves that you look at and you say, damn, you had all offseason to address some of the depth on this roster. Why do all these moves now? And there's rhyme and reason for that, in my opinion. I don't think they just did this on a whim. I believe they thought they would have better players than they did in terms of depth this offseason. But nonetheless, Howie Roseman, one of his specialties is just moving off things that he did wrong, at least as of late. So when you see and identify something that's not to your liking, you go ahead and make a move. And that's what Howie Roseman did. We're going to give him credit for doing those types of things, but also give a little bit more of a deeper dive as to why these things may work. Before we do that, let's introduce you to the show because this is the Riding the Bench Eagles podcast. I am your host, Asif Badi, and like you, I am a Birds fan who talks about the birds, only the birds, and nothing but the Philadelphia Eagles. So please do us a favor here, help us grow this channel organically by shooting this video a thumbs up, commenting your thoughts in the comments section below, and subscribing to the channel. Also, check us out on audio platforms such as Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and leave a 5-star review because all those things that I asked you to do out of the kindness of your heart does not cost you a penny. Again, I am not going to be asking a penny from you anytime soon, so cherish the moment to help a brother out. Support the Eagles channel. We appreciate your support on the opposite side of the camera, on the opposite side of the airwaves. All right, so let's talk about Tank Bigsby first, and then we'll go into the Zadarius Smith afterwards because I think that's a little bit more of the interesting signing. But Tank Bigsby is the more recent one, so we'll talk about him. You bring in a running back for relatively cheap, a 5th and a 6th round draft pick for a guy that's a quality player in the National Football League, has had moments, particularly with the Jacksonville Jaguars, starting at running back just last season. He had some really good sightings out there. He had some moments in kickoff return, which is what they primarily brought him in for. And also, if Will Shipley is the guy that got hurt and is not going to be able to go forward, you can't just run out there with Saquon Barkley and A.J. Dillon. You need to have additional depth. And also considering the fact that you lost Van Sumeren on the opening kickoff of Thursday night, opening day, you got to bring in another player. And you know what? Tank Bigsby is a quality back. I honestly believe out of all the guys we have, Saquon Barkley and all the other backup running backs, Tank Bigsby's probably the best one, in my opinion. I think he is a quality player. I think he does have a lot of traits in a running back that you like. He's a north and south runner. He runs hard. He's durable. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. Not that he's a route specialist by any means, but a guy who you could trust to catch the ball on a swing route and make some things happen. He's got enough wiggle to make a guy shake one-on-one. And honestly, in goal line situations, if you don't want to just keep pounding it with Saquon Barkley, pause. You use Tank Bigsby, right? And that's also just another valuable asset that's going to be helpful for Philadelphia Eagles, not to mention the kick return game and all that jazz, right? So a low-risk, high-reward signing, typical of the Howie Roseman trades, typical of the Howie Roseman moves in this very, very transactional offseason for the Philadelphia Eagles, coming off a Super Bowl title. This is something that you do to build the depth on your roster, and I think the Philadelphia Eagles down the roster got better. 1 to 22 is really, really good. 23 to 55 in terms of the roster, or 23 to 53, excuse me. That can use a little bit more work. This addresses that problem, and I think it's a quality trade for the Philadelphia Eagles, and good on them for getting it for such a short-term deal and actually such a cheap deal. So good for them on that front. The next move we're going to talk about is Zadarius Smith, the signing of the pass rushing veteran who was with the Detroit Lions last season, who just came off, 9 sacks last season? He had a pretty damn good year for Detroit last season. Now, albeit they ended in a very, very anticlimactic way by losing to the Washington Commanders at home after being the 1 seed all season long and being one of the more dominant teams in the NFL. Everybody in Philadelphia thought that we could take Detroit, but the Commanders did that job for us. And so here we are. They released Zadarius Smith. He's on the waiver wire. He's in free agency. We don't get him till after week 1, which I thought was pretty unique, and there's reasons why for that. But you saw in the Dallas Cowboy game, no edge pressure, not being able to contain the edge with the running game, not finishing sacks in the backfield when we had the quarterback Dak Prescott in our grasp. He was able to escape, break tackles, and make plays down the field. So we needed a guy who can just go out there and finish when he had the chance to get himself to the quarterback. And Zadarius Smith, for the better part of like 6-7 years now, quality pass rusher, okay? 3-time Pro Bowler. I think he was a second-team All-Pro in one of his highlight years just a few years ago. Played with the Packers, played with Detroit, played with the Browns. He's had a quality career and has had quality moments, okay? And bringing in a guy like Zadarius Smith, again, you sign him for a 1-year, $9 million deal that's incentive-driven, not fully guaranteed, which is why signing him after week 1 is so particularly savvy by the Philadelphia Eagles, because if they signed him week 1 and he played against Dallas, because he's a vested veteran in the NFL, that contract would have been fully guaranteed. So Philadelphia, once again, showing that they are the accountants of the NFL, waiting 1 week, sacrificing a week of edge play to get a quality guy like Zadarius Smith on a quote-unquote cheaper contract and get the upside of still having him for a majority of the year and being a veteran in that defensive line room, because that is something this team does not have. And when you have a guy like Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, who are not necessarily the most disciplined players, all for different reasons, Plus, you have Nolan Smith and Jalen Hunt, who now come back down on the depth chart in the rotation, which I think is going to be helpful. And you add Josh Uche, who's a quality pass rusher in terms of having a quote-unquote pass rushing bag. All of a sudden now you look at the edge room and you say, if Zadarius Smith hits, Philadelphia has a competent edge rotation that can not only rush the passer, but is competent in playing the run. And I think that's probably the most valuable point that we can take away with this Zadarius Smith signing. Again, we don't know how he's going to look going forward for us, but if he does hit, it's a quality move, bringing veteran presence who's been in big games before, and honestly, bringing a professional guy who knows how to prepare week to week in this young defensive line group. Veteran presence for a guy like Jalen Carter, for Jordan Davis, Nolan Smith, and Jalen Hunt is probably the most valuable thing that you can do for a young core like this. You're obviously going to get them on the field, which is important, and they deserve the playing time because they're super talented. But at the same time, having a veteran guy who just knows how to prepare, who's seen it all, who can understand how to diagnose gap schemes by the offensive tackles and guards, understanding what run fits look like, and knowing, hey, this is what I would do if this offensive lineman comes down on me. This is what you do when the splits are this way. This is what you do when his foot is dropping back this way. You know it's a pass, or when the lineman motions this way. Just being able to play and be a veteran out there on the field, giving a little guidance to these guys, I think is valuable. And again, it's not necessarily because they can't play or they're completely lost out there. They, I mean, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, etc. But how young is this defense? The average guy on this defense is like 23, 24 years old, something along those lines. It's the youngest defense in the NFL. Bringing in a veteran leadership like this in the locker room, in that defensive lineman in particular, is probably really, really valuable for this team. And I think going forward, you're going to see it benefit everybody down the chain as the season goes on. And again, just a very, very quality signing by Howie Roseman. And we mentioned it before, all these moves that they have done, bringing in John Mechie, a quality character guy, and a former second-round pick who's got pedigree, came from Alabama, but can play, just had, injuries and had to, fight cancer, leukemia outside of the football field. I mean, thank God he's doing well and he's healthy, but just a high character guy, a high quality guy, a locker room guy. You're bringing Sam Howell, again, addressing the depth on this roster because Kyle McCord wasn't cutting it. You trade him for a low value, get a good reward for him. Again, Tanner McGee is still here, but having Sam Howell back here, who we know has played in the NFL, has had success before, damn near threw for 4,000 yards with the Commanders just a few years ago. Again, quality third-string backup quarterback, not a bad move. Fred Johnson, we know. We brought him in from the Jacksonville Jaguars. We traded basically nothing for him. An offensive tackle who we know we can play in our system, in Jeff Stoughton's scheme, can replace Mailata or Lane Johnson on any given moment, at least for a short temporary period, and we know the type of player we're going to get. That's something that we overestimated last season when he decided to move on to greener pastures, and ultimately we're like, no, you're coming back here to Philadelphia, buddy. So it's good signing by them. And then obviously Zadarius Smith and Tank Bigsby, which is the moves that we talked about earlier in the show. Building this roster, not necessarily from the starting lineup, but from the backups down. That's what helped us win the Super Bowl last season. It was the depth on this roster. It was the guys after 1 to 22. It was the guys from 23 to 53 that truly made the difference for us down the stretch. Kenny Pickett stepped in when Jalen Hurts was out. Tanner McGee stepped in when Kenny Pickett got hurt. A.J. Brown, we had Jahan Dotson come in and play some quality games. Grant Calcaterra played when Dallas Goedert was out. Fred Johnson replaced Jordan Mailata for a few weeks. Isaiah Rodgers, whenever Darius Slay was in and out of the lineup, he stepped in. N'Kobe Dean, we had Orlin Burke step in. The depth up and down the roster last season is 180 degrees different than what the roster looks like this season. So Howie Roseman is going to continue to make moves. He's going to continue to try to find depth pieces later on down this roster. And I have a feeling he's not quite done. I think there's more moves to be made. low risk, high quality moves. I don't think you're going to get a big splash play by Howie Roseman. And if you do, we'll cover it on the channel. But I think moves like this that just buffer the roster and the leadership and the locker room more so are going to be the type of things that you see from Howie Roseman in this organization, because they do believe in their starting lineup, as you should, because it's quality. It's the depth. It's all the other guys that you have to kind of worry yourself about. And quite frankly, I love the Zadarius Smith signing. I really like the Tank Bigsby trade. I love Fred Johnson and John Mechie's trade, and I really like the Sam Howell move. So say what you want about them not maybe trusting their process that they had in the offseason with the guys that they had. They're remedying the situation, bringing in quality guys who we know have had success in the NFL before. And that's how you build a roster. And early on in September, this is the time to go ahead and make tweaks, to make moves, find your identity on the offensive side of the ball and defensive side of the ball, figuring out what plays or what guys fill the roles that you need to. Because once September finishes and you head into October, that's when the quality football begins, and that's when you start to see teams separate themselves from who's creme de la creme and who are not. Philadelphia, again, on paper, looks to be the quality team in the NFC. I don't think there's anybody outside of the Packers that looked impressive this past week. But again, you always retool, you always rebuild, and that's one of the things that Howie Roseman is going to do and continue to do so as long as he's the general manager of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Hey, thank you so much for watching the Riding the Bench Eagles podcast. If you want to continue to support the channel, please hit the like and subscribe button down below. Also, check us out on Instagram and TikTok at Riding the Bench Eagles Pod. We're also on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, you name it, we're on there. Thank you so much for listening, and please join us next time here at the Riding the Bench Eagles podcast.